We're going to talk to Erik Turner of Cover One, who we like to check in with from time to time. Erik, good morning. Thanks for taking time today. It's Jeremy and Joe.
Hey, appreciate you guys having me on to talk some football. Monday football, it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have the season right upon us.
Erik, I did see NFL, their bio on Twitter now has the bar, like off-season loading, and we're 42% way through the off-season.
Okay.
So we're almost halfway.
Erik, I'd hoped that we would get a Bills Sunday night opener in the 7 o'clock hour so we could say, like, all right, Bills-Ravens, who you got? Start talking matchups. But that's okay. We'll wait. We can wait a couple more days if we have to. So anyway.
I'm so excited, I'm definitely excited with the schedule release and all the leaks coming out, but also, like I said, rookie minicamp upon us as well.
Yeah. So, Erik, it's one thing we see a little bit of these guys working out with the Bills and, getting their ultimate evaluations, how it was the first week. And sometimes watching them in practice, you see what you can. You've, of course, done a lot of work on the film. So let's go through some of this Bills class, because the highlight I saw of the weekend, it's not a catch, it's not this or that. It was really about Max Hairston and how he moves, and whether it's the speed or just the overall fluidity, the hip flipping. I saw a million tweets about hip flipping. And what are your thoughts on Hairston and his skill set, his strengths, what he brings to this Bills defense in his first year?
I find his play fascinating, especially when you're talking his elite athleticism, the sticky feet, the change of direction. You saw all of that in those clips, and just simple things, like you said, just drills. And so, obviously, that type of athleticism at corner hasn't really been consistently in the Bills' defense. So I think, obviously, he adds a different dimension to that cornerback room. But I also love the entire story about him and Dorian Strong and that relationship, because you heard it in the clip you guys just played coming back into this segment. You can hear and sense the coachability of Haristen, not just by his coaching staff, but from other players, and with Dorian Strong and how they were working together. I found that probably the most fascinating portion of this rookie minicamp, because we know what Harrison can do from his film, from his athleticism and that standpoint. But to hear some of the coachability about him should really give Bills fans that excitement and hope that he can develop into what the Bills need at the corner position.
When you look at him as a prospect, what do you think the first couple things they might get with him on might be in terms of coaching him, bringing him to whether it's a more complete player or, what's on the to-do list for the coaches with Hairston?
What's not really talked about a lot is that Hairston came from Kentucky that played primarily a lot of zone coverage. If you look at some of the stats, Hairston only played man coverage last year over 16% of the time. So you can see that there's some projection on how he could play in the Bills defense and wanting to play more man coverage. But he's a guy that you saw it in some of the clips. I think it was Dan Fates that posted a clip of Dorian and Hairston working after practice. Hairston has the ability to play man coverage, but it's more of like that man mirror, that shadowing of a wide receiver. He's not really a physical corner if you're talking press, man coverage, and jam at the line of scrimmage. And that's why I think you saw Dorian Strong, who really majored in that physical brand of football at the line of scrimmage, playing in up over 50 games. He had 1,300 press coverage snaps at Virginia Tech. So he has more of that technique and refined ability at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's where the Bills want to shut down that quick passing game with more man coverage at the line of scrimmage, more press jam at the line of scrimmage to interrupt that press game that they struggle with, or that quick game that they struggled with last year.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what body type they want him at, because as you're talking about press and when you the coachability that he might have, how much of that might be the tackling? Bean called him a willing tackler after the draft, but might be somebody that they feel like, if he's coachable in this way that we're talking, that they could make him an even better tackler than he was in college.
Yeah, and we can't just focus on last season's tape when it comes to his tackling, because in 2023, when he wasn't injured, he not only was a willing tackler, but he stuck his nose in there in the box, and the fringe of the box, and is more than just a willing tackler. He actually made a difference. Last year, he was a little up and down and inconsistent, but I think a lot of that had to do with his injury, his upper body injury. So I do think that's probably not going to be as big a story as we may have expected, because a lot of us, we're looking at just that last year's film. When you got to look at the college scouting staff, they're looking at the entire film library of these players. So I think they have a pretty good idea. And I think, yes, the weight thing, he likely dropped weight, right, to run fast at the combine, show out there. And so I think that when he talked about at the combine with the staff of playing in the 190 range, I think if he's right around there, I think he'll be just fine.
Erik Turner of Cover One on the Western Hotline. You know, Eric, as you talk about these press covers, man corners, one thing the Bills obviously would be doing defensively is marrying the rush to the coverage. And I wonder if when you kind of step back on the entire offseason and look how they've attacked the front four and look how they've also added these pieces in the secondary, what Bills fans might notice that would be different about the way they approach games this year?
I think when we're talking like the reconstruction of the defense, especially the defensive line, I mean, the size, you heard some of the players talk about it, in the rookie mini camp and how big the rookie defensive linemen are when you're talking Landon Jackson, when you're talking TJ Sanders and Deion Walker. I think the size that they added is interesting because for the entire offseason, as fans, we're like, hey, they got to add a one tech. When really, yes, they did add sort of a one tech in Walker and the size of a one tech, but his style really fits that attack-oriented, that penetration-style defense when you're talking getting up the field and getting after the quarterback. Obviously, it's a passing league. Obviously, the Bills, that's how they kind of focus their defense and the philosophy behind their defense. So adding the size, not just like the 340-pound type guy, but adding the height and the length to still, in many ways, play like boxes at times and allow these guys to not only use their length and size to keep an eye on the ball, but even their height. Think about it. When you have guys that are, 6'4", 6'6", 6'7", they can not only use their arm length to keep guys at bay as far as the offensive line goes, but they can keep vision on the quarterback. They can keep vision on the running back. So if they need to process run to pass or pass to run, they're able to properly shed or properly disengage from a block to attack the quarterback. The size really stood out when it comes to a draft class as a whole. And I think, when we heard some of these quotes coming out of rookie minicamp, I don't think that was quite the surprise.
It kind of feels like this has been a theme of the offseason, hasn't it, Eric? Like the Bills are going to be allowed defensively to do a lot of different things schematically, formationally, than they would have had maybe at their disposal last year because of the new personnel?
No doubt. And I think when you mentioned, marrying the coverage and the pass rush, I think they did a great job of doing that with this class. But like you said, the skill sets they added up front and the skill sets they added on the back end really do marry well because now they can, if they want to, they can isolate corners and have Benford and have Hairston and the cornerbacks play on an island outside so they can commit more of the front 6, 7, or even 8 at times to stop the run or to, again, rush the passer with 4 or send 5 or 6. I think they can do some things much differently than they have in years past because of the pieces they added in free agency and the draft to whether it's marry the coverage to the rush or kind of disengage the rush from the back end because they have more skill and athleticism on the back end.
Erik Turner, Cover One on the Western Hotline. All right, we've talked the corners, we've talked the defensive line, what they've done there. On the offense, the piece they add that might be the most interesting, I mean, they got a receiver late, they got an offensive lineman late, but also the tight end who I feel like there aren't many consensus ideas out there, Eric, but consensus best blocking tight end in the class. I didn't see many people dispute that idea. So Jackson Hawes, what can he bring for the Bills as their third tight end, and could we see him be a mainstay as part of their offense over the course of these next couple of years if he is able to hit that role that they drafted him for?
Yeah, I think when you said kind of the consensus of him being the best blocking tight end coming out, I mean, I would have to agree. His tape when it comes to blocking, whether he is an inline, outside, on the move, on the snap, he is very good at targeting, locking out, and finishing blocks. There's no doubt that is where he hangs his hat. And so when you heard some of the stuff coming out of minicamp of him making some really nice catches, I think that was kind of the pleasant surprise, and that'll allow the Bills in many ways to, if they want to run more third-team personnel, so one running back, 3 tight ends, he is not just some blocker that's going to be in there. They can run some play action and have him leak out and run some of the underneath stuff. And I think with how much the Bills ran 6 offensive linemen last year with Alec Anderson, tops in the league, I think now you can kind of blur those lines and, hey, maybe they don't need to use that extra offensive lineman who they probably don't want to throw a pass to all that often, whereas they can insert, Hawes there and they can run all the same stuff because he is that talented as a run blocker. but also they can get him out into routes when needed.
Erik Turner with us on the Wester Hotline. What about some of the UDFA guys that they brought in, Erik? Is there a guy or a couple of guys that stand out to you, maybe not even to make the team, but that you can kind of guess that Bills fans might fall in love with in training camp in the preseason? Every year we get a training camp hero. Do you see anybody that they brought in that catches your eye?
Yeah, this guy I've been watching a lot recently that I kind of become enamored with is Keontae Jenkins, the linebacker from Virginia Tech. I think I love linebackers, and he's kind of that hybrid former DB that played linebacker, played like as the overhang slot type in Virginia Tech's defense. Very athletic, very fluid mover. Has some warts in coverage and stuff like that, but he's a developmental prospect. I think they want to kind of mold into a linebacker, and he's going to have to gain a little weight. He's on the lighter side, but his athleticism and movement and where they used him really shows like how athletic he is and how much they depended on him in a role that kind of fits in the Bills' defense. He could in many ways be like a third safety, a third linebacker, but more of that athletic type that you want, jamming tight ends at the line of scrimmage. And he's that type of developmental prospect that probably is a few years away, but if they can start molding him in ways that I know they had brought in Louis Cine, the former Georgia standout, last year, and he got picked up off the team. But I think they want to mold that type of guy, 2 years, 3 years from now. He's a guy that I've been watching a lot of film of just because, one, I love that position, that hybrid linebacker, former DB position and role. And what I know the Bills do love that type of player.
Erik Turner, Cover One. Erik, before we let you go, training camp is when we actually get a chance to look at all this. Is there a positional battle or a rotation you'll be keyed in on more than others, just to see how it all plays out at camp? Whether it's the secondary, if it's the front four, do you anticipate maybe more competition than years past?
I think safety is what stands out to me because obviously the investment in Cole Bishop and the pieces that they brought in this offseason. Taylor Rapp, and as much as they love him, and he's kind of the cornerstone when it comes to the safety position currently, and how much the Bills love him, I do think that, there are times where the health comes into play. And so the safety position for me, bringing in Jordan Hancock, I think he's a guy that fits the Bills scheme very, very well. Guy that played in the slot a lot, but also that slot position in the Bills defense and the safety position share a lot of the similar responsibilities because of how often they play those two high coverages and having to be a part of the run fit. So I think the safety position is going to be fun from a short-term perspective, but also from a long-term developmental perspective because there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of development that still needs to happen for some of the younger players, guys like Cole Bishop.
All right, Erik Turner on the Wester Hotline. Erik, thanks very much, and when the schedule does come out, enjoy it. We'll get there.
You too, guys. Have a good day.
All right, very good. Erik Turner, Cover One. You can follow him on Twitter, of course, all the work that Cover One does. We're big fans of their work, and thank Erik for his time.